We'll move on to the fire rescue budget. Chief, Deputy Chief, good to see you both. Once again, let's start with the CIP.
Sure.
Any new current additions, that kind of thing? I knew the police had some. I'm not recollecting if you're making any current year changes, Chief, in the CIP.
The only change from last year was the portable radio replacement. We moved from FY21 to 20. Well, actually, there's two changes. We moved the portable radio replacement from 21 to 20, and we moved the replacement of the training tower from 20 out to 2023. So we didn't add anything new. We've just kind of adjusted the years. We currently have a federal FEMA grant submitted for the portable radios. We're hoping to hear on that, but if not, it would come up for next fiscal year. And then the only other change, it's really a correction, which is on the portable radio replacement. It says 6-year LP. That should be 5-year LP. So that's $40,000 at 5 years for a total of $200,000.
Okay. So the other two things I see is the, did we move up the forestry truck?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's fine. I was setting you up on
Yeah,
that.
so our forestry truck went out of service last year. The vehicle was a military surplus vehicle. It was a 1991 Ford F-250 military surplus. That went out of service last year. It was unable to be repaired. So we did move some things around to replace the forestry truck in fiscal 19.
Okay. Now, that wasn't part of your original budget, though, right? Was it still the plan going into this budget cycle that we were going to move that up?
The plan was, the forestry was on, but it wasn't on for 19. I advanced it up, but it was on the CIP.
Okay. And I'm only asking that is because if it went out of service last year, did you need it? And are you missing it now? Because
fortunately, it went out of service in the summertime. It was right at the end of brush season, what we would consider to be brush season. We're coming into brush season now, but we'll be able to make do until that truck goes into service sometime in July. It's essentially a pickup truck with a skid unit in it, so it's not anything custom that needs to be built. So it's really just a matter of placing the order. We should have the truck in service sometime in July.
okay. And I guess are we starting this year with replacing engine number 1, or we're moving some monies around?
Yep, no, engine 1 has been on the CIP to be replaced in fiscal 19. So that is on there as planned. And I know the CFO mentioned during the budget presentation that I think it might even be listed in here. He has a plan to put a piece of money down on that. So we're going to do a 5-year lease on it at 95, but his plan was to put, I think, $200,000 down and then only finance the balance of $300,000, I believe.
Yeah, okay. All right, good to know on that. Let's see, good there. All right, any other questions, comments on the CIP? And that will be any year. So the chief is moving stuff around, so we can look at any year. Kim?
Chief, did you say that the radio replacement got moved up to 20? Or?
Yeah, so portable radio replacement was, I believe, in 2023. So I swapped that and the fire training tower.
Because it's showing as 22 and 23.
Portable radio replacement, the start of it?
Yeah, 22.
I have it on my sheet as 20.
Isn't that what everybody else has?
Yeah, I have 22.
Mr. Chairman,
And
is
the
this what you
tower
have?
is 22 as well.
No, we definitely have a different version. All right. So what we'll do, Chief, is we'll work that out with Ed, and we'll get you back to go over those, and we'll make sure it should be a quick get-together on that.
Sure.
So-
You know, again, brief summary, what I did was the training tower was in 2023.
Yep.
Portable radios, training tower was in 20, radios was in 2023. I switched them.
All right. So the training tower did get moved.
Yes, that's at 2023 now.
Okay.
It's at 2022.
Now?
I have it on
Stand by.
2023.
It's supposed to
I'm
be...
sorry, 50,000, I see that now.
Okay.
Looking at the wrong line.
Oh, wait a sec. No, it's just, this could be tough. The fire tower replacement
No,
is in, I'm seeing it in 2022 in this version here.
it's,
You're
I
right.
have it as fire tower replacement, 2023, for a total of an annual payment of $87,500.
All right, this is still shown in 2020. We obviously have an older
Yeah.
version on this, so
Yep,
we'll
that's
we'll
fine.
get that straightened out.
I'd be more than happy to come
Great,
back.
that's a nice catch. Thank you very much on that. And we'll revisit that. Mallory?
So they were discussing modifying the CIP for the police station to fit the new radios. Is that something you're going to need to do for the fire trucks as well?
No, we're on a different bandwidth. Yeah,
Okay.
they're currently on UHF. They're jumping up. We're on a VHF frequency, so there's no, we have no radio issues.
And even with this new portable radio, or if those are portables?
They're portables, yeah. The
vehicles?
frequency itself and the bandwidth is not changing. It's replacement of the equipment.
Thank you.
All right. So basically, we'll put the CIP on hold. Unless there's any other questions I want to take care of tonight anyways on this. All right, so let's move right on to the operating budget then, Chief.
No problem. I'll start off with information like I normally do relative to ambulance receipts. I know that's always a question that comes up. I spoke with Rick Martin, who's the president of our Comstar Billing, who's our billing company, at the beginning of the week, and he provided me with some activity tracking reports over the last 3 fiscal years, 16, 17, and then to date in 18. I'll just read real quick, surmise what he said. So he attached the activity reports for the 3 fiscal years. It says 16 and 17 are complete. Working FY18 accounts is very active. So the collection percentages will climb until all work is complete, but the expected FY18 results will be at or above historical levels. So fiscal 17 last year, we landed with a total collection of 1.4, just a little over 1.4 million. And then to date, we are at 684,472, still remaining time within this fiscal year. But if you project that out, as he mentioned, we are still on track to be at or above those levels.
So I had one sort of CIP-related question. I know you'll be recycling through the ambulances over the next several years. From what I saw, it looked like ambulance 1, the receipts from ambulance would be covering that, but not for ambulance 2 when that started? Or was I misreading that? Or should it just wait? It could
No,
have just- the years
no,
would have been messed up.
the plan is in 2020, it'd be ambulance 3 that's the next standby.
And
It's next, I think it's 21.
21.
But the plan is for the purchase of that ambulance to come from ambulance receipts like we did ambulance 1.
Okay, good. And I only bring this up as just a reminder to everyone that's watching, that these ambulance receipts, they do basically cover a certain percentage of ambulance-related operating budget and CIP. So the ambulances that are running around town, at this point, are we 100% covering them in terms of purchases now?
So,
Or is that
yes,
the
all
intent?
EMS, so the ambulance receipts are covering 10 positions, including benefit, salaries and benefits. It covers the medical supplies account.
Right.
And for the first time last year, when we purchased ambulance 1, we were able to pay cash for the vehicle out of ambulance receipts, so it wasn't done on a lease purchase. And we're on track to do that again with the next ambulance not this year, I think it's next year.
Great. And I only say that because anyone, especially town meeting members, picking this up like they do only a couple of times a year, that's nearly impossible for them to see, and to see where those receipts are getting spread back into the budgets and covering really a heck of a lot of what they're doing. So just, that's kind of an underline on that. Okay, in terms of the operating budget, and I interrupted you, Chief, I apologize.
Not a problem.
Highlights and stuff that you couldn't get done or want to get done?
The budget, there's really a couple of large changes in the budgets this year that I'll talk about. The first is the restoration of the second fire inspector position, which went away in 2003 when then Captain Bill Cusson retired. Him and Lieutenant Steve Anderson were both full-time in that division. We always had 2 full-time people in that division, and when Captain Cusson retired, that position went away because there were other operational changes taking place at that same time. We were going 24 hours. We were assuming EMS, so that position didn't get filled. So over the years, it's always been my desire to restore that second inspector position. When there were 2 full-time inspectors in there, the way that we set it up was one inspector dealt with the commercial side of the house and the other inspector dealt with the residential side of the house. Smoke, carbon monoxide, oil burner, underground storage tanks, all of those things that revolve around the residential side. You know, an unfortunate consequence of the loss of that position back in 2003 is that we had to take the residential side of the house and we had to put that responsibility onto the shift officers. So that became part of their sort of normal day-to-day. It's not the best situation because unfortunately with that type of work, we make a lot of appointments with realtors, with homeowners, and we're not able to keep a lot of those appointments due to emergency calls. So it's not really the best way to do business on the inspectional side of the house. So it was always my hope and desire that we'd be able to kind of restore, you know, what we had. Not to mention that the inspection side, you know, continues to grow as we get, you know, some larger projects that comes in, and even just the residential side in terms of oil burners, things, those have increased over the years, and the complexity of the inspections. Over the last several years, not to bore you with a lot of details, but in order to conduct fire inspections now, you have to be a credentialed fire inspector within the Commonwealth, both at the basic and advanced level. We, in Auburn, we always required state certification as an inspector, but there's been other requirements that have been kind of put on the inspectors. And when you have 4 shift officers who are responsible for running a group, also having to take on those types of duties and those requirements, it gets very challenging because, again, you have, you know, you could have an inspector go out today and pass an inspection, or, you know, I should say fail an inspection, and then say, well, this is what you got to do to correct it, and then tomorrow another officer could go out to do that same inspection and then maybe have slightly just a different interpretation on the code. So when you have 4 different people trying to interpret the code, it gets a little challenging. So how we were able to accomplish the restoration of the second, let me back up. There was 2 other things that were driving this in my conversations with the town manager. Captain Anderson will be retiring in 2 years. He's informed me that in a couple of years he's going. And he has been full-time in that office for 20 years. And when he walks out the door, there's a lot of institutional knowledge that's going out the door with him in terms of the commercial industrial side, the developers, the property owners in the business community. And it's just not a good business plan to, you know, have someone walking out the door and then passing the baton same day and, you know, kind of a little pat on the back and saying good luck. So it was always my desire that we would be able to get somebody in there that would have a couple of years to work, so Captain Anderson could kind of pass on that knowledge about what's going on in that office. Unfortunately, in early July, Captain Anderson was injured. We had a couple of fires within a week of each other at the Worcester Envelope Company. Captain Anderson was injured at one of those fires He's going to wind up having some surgery at some point. So he's been out since early January, and that forced me early on, within a couple of weeks of that injury, to take Greg Moran, who is slated to go in there in July, and I had to take him off of his normal group assignment as a shift commander of Group 4, and I had to transfer him over into the fire prevention office. So we had a presence there, and he was able to continue that work. So currently, we're running short on Group 4 because Captain Moran is already manning that office. But I think it further highlights the need to have, it's a busy office, and I think it further highlights the need to have two people in there because, you know, one injury and the next thing you know, your fire prevention office is closed, you know, for a couple of months. So to have that kind of continuity was important as well. So over the years, it has always been my plan on how to fund this second fire inspector was with the fire suppression money that we were using for part-time shifts. As the years have gone on, the number of eligible call firefighters that we've had within the department who can take part-time shifts has dwindled. We are currently down now to 2 members who are eligible to work part-time shifts, but one of those members is out on a long-term injury, and I'm not even sure if he's going to be returning. So we currently at the moment have 1 member who is working the part-time shifts, and he currently has 2 shifts. So we're filling 2 out of a potential 14 shifts. So in essence, 12 of those part-time shifts are vacant. It's a broken system. It has been a broken system for years. The part-time shift system went into place in 2003, and at that time, we had 3 during the day and 3 at night, for a total of 6 a day, and then at some point it went to 2 during the day, 2 at night, 1 during the day, 1 at night. So the program has altered over the years based on, you know, the amount of eligible people that we've had. So I have had conversations with the Call Firefighters Union. They understand the decision. They are behind the decision. I've had no pushback, you know, from the union. They understand that it's a broken system. They understand that it's a necessary move. So the restoration of the fire inspector's position is going to be done internally within the budget. So what that allow me to do is, this current fiscal year, we had $80,000 allotted in there. I'm going to take $60,000 of that money. That will transfer Captain Moran over to fire prevention on July 1, and then that will allow me to backfill his captain's position on Group 4, backfill the lieutenant's position, and bring in a Step 1 firefighter paramedic. All of that will be accomplished within the $60,000. The remaining $20,000, which you see in the budget, will be enough money to maintain the call firefighters on their emergency callback. One of the other things, you know, Mr. Chairman, to your point, you know, talking to town meeting members, the public at home, one thing that it's important to understand, and I like to reiterate because I think it gets lost, is that elimination of the part-time shifts does not mean elimination of the call firefighters. One has nothing to do with the other. You can have call firefighters without having them actually working station, you know, shifts in the station. We were looking at some numbers the other day. It'll be 7 years in May since I was appointed chief. I've hired a dozen call firefighters in the last 7 years, and they've all come and gone for one reason or another, moved out of town. We've actually had the opportunity to hire many of them as career members as we've been able to grow. But out of the 12 that I've hired, there's 1 left, you know, in terms of, you know, who's still active. I continue to support having a call firefighter program, but they're tough to get, and it's not just here in Auburn. It's a statewide problem. It's a nationwide problem. But Deputy and I conducted, and Captain Mitchell from the call firefighters, we conducted some interviews a couple of weeks ago, you know, for some candidates. We got 1 that we're going through the process right now with the background check and things like that. So we continue to try to recruit and retain call firefighters, but it's becoming a challenging thing. But to have a part-time shift program that's sort of built around them, it's a broken system, and I just can't justify continuing anymore. Not when we have, you know, needs in other areas of the department that money could be better suited.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. And thanks for explaining that, too.
No problem.
I'm going to open up to questions.
I just got
sure.
two more things just relative to the budget. So the other thing, the other increase in the firefighter line item is for 2 additional firefighter paramedics. But it would be a January 1 start, so it's the equivalent of 1 salary, but it would be a January 1 start. As you all know, since I've been chief, I've been advocating for increasing our staffing from 8 career members to 9, which would allow us to reset our minimum from 6 to 7. In conversations, with the manager and with the CFO, we've come up with a plan to do that, hopefully over the next 2 fiscal years. So it would be 2 in this budget, and then hopefully 2 in next year's fiscal budget, and then that would satisfy the requests that I've been asking for many years. With that, the only other real addition that came in here, other than normal contractual stuff, which is some smaller adjustments to meet 3-year averages, is you'll see an increase in the overtime line from 188 to 225. And the reason that we requested that was historically, as you know, I am in here every year requesting transfers into our overtime line item. And 100% of the time, I don't think that I've ever had to go to the reserve fund to cover an overtime transfer. We've always been able to do it internally. But I've been able to do it internally from the fire suppression line item because of vacant part-time shifts. With those part-time shifts going away and that money being utilized elsewhere, that excess money within the budget for overtime is not going to be there. I presented some information to the CFO. I'll be happy to share it in greater detail if anybody has any questions, but I shared some information with the CFO, just not only on our historical trends for overtime, but a little snapshot of what 6 or 7 other communities around us with similar size organizations, similar, and again, for the purpose of this overtime survey, we really didn't have to get too crazy in terms of, call volume, things like that, because that wasn't really the intent. The intent was, what do you have for staffing? What do you have for your minimums? Because it really doesn't matter call volume-wise. It's what are you trying to maintain? And what that survey showed was that we were very much underfunded within our overtime line. And even at this request of 225, which I think is conservative, I want to say the average was somewhere around 250, and I even made a comment to the chairman, last week, and I made it to the CFO. I'm not sitting here right now telling you that I need 250, because 1, I don't think I need 250, but I also don't have enough data to back that up yet, because this is not the best year for us to look at what our overtime trends were. Last July 1, between July and August, we put on a total of 6 new members between retirements and the schedule change and things like that. We had 4 members attend the fire academy. We had, we had to beef up some shifts that we normally wouldn't have beefed up because they were doing their field training time. So this is not the fiscal year to look at as far as overtime and then use that as a historical perspective on what I think we're going to need. I'm going to come to you at some point. I had sent that email to the chairman that I know he shared with you. I expect my overtime shortfall to be probably as much as $40,000 this year. That's more than it usually has been in previous fiscal years because of the reasons that I just stated. So to sit here right now and look at the survey that I put together, although I think valid to show that the overtime line item is underfunded, I'm not going to sit here and say that I should even be at what the average is, because I don't know. I think we need another year or 2 working at full staff with what our new complement's going to be. Again, looking at what our increases in call volume have been. Just in the past 10 years, we've had close to a 20% increase in our call volume. It's growing by about 2% a year. We finished calendar 2017 with our busiest year on record again for the 3rd year in a row. Based on those trends, I can't sit here and say that there's any signs of that slowing down. But all of those things have contributing factors into our overtime. So I think 225 is it's a good number to start with, just knowing that that suppression money is not going to be there for transfers, and I think it's a conservative number for us to look at for another fiscal year until we have some better information, you know, maybe moving forward into next year's budget. So I think it's a realistic, conservative number.
Great, thanks, Chief. And yeah, we had a good conversation on that. We'd rather this budget be as real as possible based on empirical data, so we'll see where this goes. And that's why we have a couple of reserve accounts in case we run into any issues. I'll open this up to questions. Kim?
Okay, first off, your budget shows 200,000 in overtime, not 225.
We got it revised last week.
Ah, okay.
Right. The offset was from, I believe, ambulance receipts?
Yes, the additional $25,000 is coming from ambulance receipts, so it's not an additional on the levy.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked the police chief. What's your staffing level? I know one chief, one deputy. How many captains? How many?
So, and again, that's gonna change in the next couple of years, but I'll let you know what that plan is. So we have a chief, a deputy, we have a fire prevention captain, and then we have 4 shift captains who serve as shift commanders, and then 4 lieutenants. So there's a captain and a lieutenant on each group. The captain works out of headquarters, the lieutenant works out of West Street. And we always have a supervisor on duty. So if the captain's on vacation, the lieutenant's not, and vice versa. And if for whatever reason we were only working one shift officer and then that officer fell injured or ill or something like that, we would fill the overtime with a supervisor. So we have a supervisor on 24/7. So when Captain Moran gets transferred into fire prevention, there'll be, for a short period of time, 2 captains in that office, because I'm not gonna demote Captain Moran for a short period of time, and then when Captain Anderson leaves, promote him back. But my plan, the long-term plan is when Captain Anderson leaves, Captain Moran will take over as the head of that division, and then that position will be backfilled with an inspector. Okay. So whether it's a firefighter, a lieutenant, or a captain, regardless of who bids for that position, that will come with a fixed salary and a new inspector title. So there'll be a captain and an inspector in that division.
Okay, and how many firefighters do you have?
6 per shift.
Full-time?
8 per group. So 24? 20, no, I'm sorry.
32?
We have six firefighters and 2 officers per group. And
Total, you asking total members or firefighters?
Total firefighters, full-time?
33.
Rank of firefighter? I think you're adding in supervisors in there.
No, you're
She
just
said
talking
full-time.
Full-time firefighters, not, so you have,
Oh, so it's 6 times 4, 24.
24 firefighters, 4 lieutenants,
Correct.
2 3.
4 captains, 5 captains.
okay, so 24
Correct.
firefighters.
Yep.
And how many calls for service do you guys have, not police combined?
Combined fire and ambulance.
Yeah, fire
Yeah,
ambulance.
so we finished, I'll get you the exact total. We finished, do you know off the top of your head, 3,642, I believe, is what we finished 2017 with. That was emergency.
3,000?
3,642. And that was just emergency activity between fire and EMS. That did not count any of the code enforcement actions. And the code enforcement actions normally average about 800 a year between inspections
And that's fire.
That's fire prevention, yes. There's a number of recurring inspections on an annual basis that our business community has to have just to operate. And I'll give you one example. Take our nursing facilities. Life Care, the Woods and the Lodge, their state requirements say that, not only do they have to conduct a certain amount of inspections and things on their own, but they have to have a certain level of emergency preparedness and inspections done by us as well. So between that, then you throw in all of the establishments that serve alcohol in the community with the Life Safety 101 inspections. They're required to have inspections by us on an annual basis before they're reissued their liquor license. Tier 2 inspection facilities, which is hazardous materials reporting. When you add up all of the businesses on the commercial industrial side that require some sort of quarterly, biannual or annual inspection, it's just a little over 200 inspections. So that's why it's imperative that we have somebody who's focusing on the commercial industrial side, because that alone, when you take 365 days a year, minus weekends, minus holidays, or whatever, there's at a minimum, here's the number of inspections that we have to do just so our business community can open their doors on an annual basis to meet their requirements. That doesn't include any of the residential side or the crisis of the day that pops up, which is usually 2 crises of the day. But, so that totals up to a fire prevention activity of about 800 a year.
Through the chair, just a quick question on the inspection. So obviously, inspections are, safety-driven, good business practices for everything. But are there any fees taken in relative to fire inspections, any of the ones you've just mentioned?
So, yes, on the smoke and carbon monoxide detector, which are required by law upon sale or transfer of a home, we receive $50 per inspection for those. To be able to give you what that fee is off the top of my head, I couldn't. But and then same thing, oil burner permits, underground storage tank. There are permit fees for essentially every inspection. Most inspections we do. I will tell you that. Like the 110 life safety inspections for all the alcohol facilities, the life care quarterlies, there are no fees. There are no fees for those. I don't know of really any communities that do charge, but that's just something that doesn't sit right with, with me, that we're hitting the business community just so, again, they can open their doors. But many of the things, again, like the underground, things like that, those have permit fees. And it'd be very easy to figure out what those are and get you that number.
No, I mean, total number, I'm just curious, and does that go back into?
General fund.
General fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, general fund revenues.
Anything else, Kim? No? Valerie?
So the increases for the dues meetings and licenses and certifications, is that due to the addition of the second inspector position, or?
No, let me look. I have all of that tracked here. Gotta get some tabs for these things. If you want to pass that down to Ms. Holstrom, you can have that, Ms. Holstrom. That's a 10-year call volume
Thank you.
overview. I'd be more than happy to share that with anybody else that is interested.
And while you're looking for that, the dues meetings, the budget's flat versus last year, so question is still, is that volume, I mean, that expense up?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. It's up considerably over prior year, so we should have asked that last year. I don't think we did. I don't recollect that one.
Okay, so under dues and meetings, what happens here is some of this is driven by, so if I add up everything that's under my dues and meetings category, it totals $7,285. That's if we attend, if the deputy and I attend every state chiefs meeting that we're budgeted for, every district chiefs meeting that we're budgeted for. That typically doesn't happen over the course of the year.
Okay.
So when you look at what the 3-year averages were, it's because we either didn't attend something or like our professional development is in there. I offer typically all of my supervisors to go to certain professional development. If they can't go to as much this year, then we'll spend less in that account. But when you tally up everything that is under that category, that's where you get the budget line. But if it falls short, it's because we didn't attend.
Okay.
Yeah, my guess is with the deputy chief getting to that position last year, that's probably why we bumped it up last year. Much more of an opportunity.
Yeah, I can tell you that our fire chief dues, the Fire Chiefs Association of Mass dues did go up this year, as well as, oh, and here's the other thing, and this is something we can certainly talk about. Here's the other reason why that went up over previous fiscal years. A couple of fiscal years ago, the Finance Committee approved an additional $3,000 for special operations. So it right here, special operations, $3,000. And for whatever reason, that sits in dues and meetings. So that was an expense that the Finance Committee, I want to say 2 years ago, approved that request, but it sits in that line, and it really could be pulled out of there and put somewhere else. It's more of an operational need because it 1,500 supports the tech team, 1,500 supports the dive team. So it's not necessarily a dues and meetings type category, but that's also a reason why that did take a jump, was because the Finance Committee did authorize that additional special ops money. But
I don't remember approving that thing.
that,
All right, we got to relook at that.
go to the tape.
That's what the fall town meeting's for. We'll fix that right up. All right, thanks, Chief.
Through the chair, just, so, Chief, you're asking or hoping to get an additional firefighter per, or two
2 in January.
in January?
Correct.
The goal being to get additional personnel on each group.
Correct.
But that's not going to increase your minimum staffing, is that correct? So in theory, this could help with some of the overtime costs?
It's not going to help with the overtime costs. With 2 coming on in January, 2 groups will be at 9, 2 groups will still be at 8. The minimum is still going to be to allow 2 off. So when we get to 9 and we allow 2 people off, our new minimum will be 7 instead of 6. So we're still going to be funding the same number of overtime hours in the course of a year. It's just when we do that, we're going to have an additional body on the shift, one more body on the shift than we do today. So none of this is designed to reduce overtime. It's a very difficult thing to do in our department. It's a labor-intensive department. We don't really, it takes bodies to do what we do. So this goal to add an extra person to a shift is really to provide better coverage and flexibility in our ability to respond during the shift versus reduce overtime.
But if that, so you said if 2 had given the day off, 2 were given vacation day, personal day, and a third calls in sick for that shift,
We'd fill to 7.
You'd fill to 7?
Yes, because we want to set the new minimum at 7. It's essentially what we're, the same thing we're doing today. We're at 8, we allow 2 off to work at 6. We're going to be at 9, allow 2 off to work at 7. So essentially, we're doing the same thing. We're upping our minimum staffing by 1.
Okay.
Good? Okay. Any other questions, Mallory?
Through the chair, you have an, I guess, unfunded medical director line item? And I'm just wondering if that's a placeholder?
No, so over the years, that's another thing that could be cleaned up. There's 2 medical director line items. You'll see the medical director one that has a $0 amount, but then on the next one down, you'll see a line that says medical director services for $4,000.
Right.
That's that is the salary for our medical director out of UMass Hospital.
Okay.
That other medical director line could be deleted. It's not that it's unfunded. There's 2 there, and
Okay.
it's always been that
All
way.
right, I just want to make sure you're not
Yep.
going without.
No, nope.
It's a nice catch. Any other questions on this? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing that I will say, just to add, is the only thing that has not been addressed, which was in my cover letter, is the deputy chief's salary is level funded, only because the bylaw employees have not been dealt with.
Right.
As far as any COLA, so that's the only thing that has not been addressed in this budget.
And as you know, our hands are tied at this part of the process.
Correct, yep. I'm just bringing that to your attention.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you for that reminder on that. What we have is a town manager recommended fire administration suppression and prevention budget of $3,082,977. That represents a 4.45% increase over the prior year budget, including the additions to staff and all these other changes.
Motion to recommend. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Chief, thanks. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And just let me know when you...